Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Hawkeye and Parent Family webinar series. Once again, my name is Danielle Martinez, and I work in academic support and retention, and will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you're new to our series, we hope that we provide you with up-to-date information about what's going on here at the University of Iowa. I'm really excited for today's webinar because it is from two of my favorite people in the entire world, two of our colleagues here in academic support and retention, Mira Anson, who serves as our director, and Stephanie Purcell, who serves as one of our other assistant directors. As a reminder, each webinar is recorded and then posted on the Academic Support and Retention website so it can be accessed at a later date or viewed by individuals who are not able to attend our live webinar. Therefore, during the presentations, your mic functions will be muted on, but later on we'll have a question and answer portion, so please feel free to type your questions into the question box on the side. But without further ado, we'll get to our presentation on academic support resources with Stephanie and Mira.
Hi everyone, this is Stephanie Purcell. I'm just going to kick it off for us today. So the first thing that we just want to share is what our objectives are for the session. So first thing we're going to be talking about is how to foster positive academic behaviors. So things that you can think about when you're talking to your student about how they want to be successful inside of the classroom, as well as just as a student here at Iowa. The second thing is we're going to provide an overview of different academic support options on campus and share the different types and then how to find what would be best for your student depending on what class they're in. And then lastly, how should your student utilize those services? So we'll give you kind of some best practices and strategies of things for you and your student to talk about. So one thing we want to mention is that we know that academic support is one of the many pieces of your student's experience and of the many things that kind of go into being a successful student. So we are really focusing on the different academic support options that we have on campus, but just know we do understand that this is just one part of the larger picture for your student. So some of the messaging for things to think about when you're talking with your student are the following. So the first one is just about being proactive with utilizing the different resources. We really want to encourage your student to take advantage of things earlier in the semester and not to wait until they're really feeling lost in the class or waiting till that night before an exam. Really staying on top of the work and the material. So as soon as a question comes up, to start taking advantage of those resources. The second thing is establishing and using a network of support. So these are people that are part of the campus community and people that are outside the campus community as well. So on campus, every student has an academic advisor, they have their faculty. If they live on campus, their resident assistant, their RA, as well as their family members, friends. These are all people that we want them to be talking to, regularly being kept in the loop as questions come up to definitely ask and talk with others about that. The third thing is practicing constructive academic behaviors. So it's really important for your student to know what works for them and what doesn't. So sometimes, we all learn a little bit differently and we're going to have different academic goals. And so it's really important that what works for maybe your student's friend may not be what works best for them. So they should really be focusing on things that they're finding that is working for them. We also encourage them to seek out help when needed. There's a lot of support on campus for, obviously we're talking about the academic support options today, but there's also a lot of other resources on campus as well. So as soon as something comes up, to definitely seek out help. There's a lot of people here on campus that want to help your students, so definitely take advantage of those resources. And then the last thing is bouncing back. So if your student encounters any obstacles, any challenges, try not to let that deter them or to really then negatively impact their experience moving forward. If they get, a grade that they're not as satisfied with, try to learn from that experience, not to focus too much on maybe the grade that they didn't want to get, but really focusing on what behaviors they did to get there so they can make adjustments so they can be more successful and help meet their goals moving forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Mira Anson from Academic Support and Retention as well. And what we have found to be really helpful when we work with students, particularly in the context of getting them connected with academic support resources, is certainly messaging to the students, but also how can we best message to the students. So we've developed 4 bullet points here, ways in which that we have found we've been successful and our campus partners have been successful when working with students to get them more readily connected to academic support resources. The first is really tapping into intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So really what really gets your student motivated to make those connections, to reach out for assistance, to ask for help when they need it. And oftentimes it is intrinsic in terms of what are the students' individual goals, what do they help to accomplish, what would really help establish some self-efficacy and some confidence, but also too, maybe what would be more of some of the extrinsic motivation factors, such as getting good grades, progressing to degree, getting into a competitive degree program. There's a variety of different motivational factors. So we oftentimes take some time to sit down with the student and talk about what really your goals are and how can we get you connected to those goals and what are the incentive pieces that will work within that. And then speaking of goals, developing realistic goals. So as many of you may know, when a student comes to college, it's a lot of transition both in and out of the classroom. And oftentimes we work with many students who will be enrolled in a course or in a degree program and find, well, maybe I'm interested in something else. And they might want to change their major or pursue a different career path or a different academic path. And oftentimes a lot of that comes down to a student thinking, well, I did really well in this particular course in high school, but I get to college and I find that maybe it's not what I want to study here for 4 years. So really thinking about what are the realistic goals for that student, particularly given how their interests and how their strengths may change and evolve as they grow and experience college, especially that first year. Also next, foster a sense of belief in self. And this is that self-advocacy piece or self-efficacy piece. So how can we continue to tell a student that, every single college student encounters an obstacle. Really what matters is how they respond to that obstacle. And a big piece of that, and I'll elaborate on that here in a moment, really is resiliency, really knowing that they can do it. If they have a particular goal set in mind, and as long as that goal set is realistic, if that's where they want to be, then continuing to encourage that student, yes, you can do this. And then finally, determining a gap. So oftentimes, an exercise that we'll work through with groups of students or with individual students is really a discussion based upon what are your goals and what are your behaviors and how is there a gap between the two. So to elaborate a little bit more on the gap, some positive questions that we present to a lot of students that really help determine how can we better connect behaviors and goals would be asking a set of questions to get students to think about what that gap might be so they are more likely to reach their goals. First, how do you want to spend your time, or what matters to you? So what values does a student have, or what is important in their day, and what goals do they have, and are their behaviors consistent with what their values might be? How do you currently spend your time? What we find, particularly with incoming students, is that time management can oftentimes be a concern, particularly coming from an environment like a high school environment where their days tend to be very structured and very full, and then come into the college environment where they might find that there are gaps of time where they don't have anything assigned to them to do. And so thinking about what are they doing in that time? Are they studying? Are they working? Are they socializing with friends? And how best can they better utilize that time by creating constructive academic behaviors? What is the same and what is different? So oftentimes we use this question when we talk to students about what has helped them previously and what will help them now, given the fact that they're in a very different environment than they were before. So strategies that they use to be academically successful in high school or at a previous institution might carry over here at the University of Iowa, or there may be variation in those too as they adjust to a new academic setting. Who has been your support people in the past? What we hear, especially again from our first year students, is that family is a top support for them. So continuing to reach out to parents, to other family members, if there are questions or concerns, and we definitely encourage students to maintain their support structure, but also to be open to thinking about who else can they go to seek help. who are their support structures at the University of Iowa. And oftentimes that almost always includes an academic advisor. If the student lives in their residence halls, that could be their RA or a hall coordinator, or even a faculty member, or perhaps they connect with someone in our office. So there's really a variety of resources that students can use to help construct that positive support structure. And then two, how can those people help close the gap? So having a student come into the office, either that's with their advisor or with one of us or with a faculty member, and be more specific about their concerns. So for example, if it's a course, thinking, well, I might be struggling in this particular course, but in what ways? Is it the test? Is it the homework? So really thinking about, is it related to content? So thinking about specific areas of where there might be concerns, so they can bring that up to support individuals to help them address those concerns. And then two, readjusting to what behaviors can students do in order to close that gap. So again, thinking about what their academic goals may be and what behaviors can they put into place to better help them reach those goals. And perhaps that is more time studying. Perhaps that's connecting with faculty or instructors more, or their advisors more. It really varies by student and situation, and two, by course. We wanted to elaborate a little bit more on building resiliency, because what we found as we work with more students, and I think that this is something that applies to all college students, is the importance of resiliency. And what we know is that students who demonstrate behavior that is more consistent with resiliency, so students who bounce back, they do tend to be more successful in terms of grades, in terms of getting that degree in a timely manner. And we always wanted to make sure that we're being very clear about what we mean by resiliency and behaviors that contribute to resiliency. So if we look at the graphic, adversity, belief, and consequence. And really what's important here is the belief, because again, every college student will face an adversity. And it's not that that happens, it's the belief about the situation that leads to the consequence. So for example, a student may get a bad grade on a test. And so what is the consequence of getting, say, for example, a D in that test? Is the consequence that they withdraw from the course or pursue a different pathway in terms of a degree program? It really depends upon what they believe about that situation. And that comes back to self-efficacy and what their goals are. So we really focus on students to stop and think about, what are really your goals? How do you believe in yourself? If there's something that you want to do, and if you believe that you can realistically achieve it, then by all means keep going and don't give up.
Thanks, Mira. So now we're going to focus a little bit about how to find the different resources that we have available on campus. So the first thing that we want everyone to know is to know about Tutor Iowa. So it's a website, tutor.uiowa.edu, and this is a great place to go if you're just wondering what options are available to my student. And it works like Google. So there's a search bar where you can just type in the class that the student is enrolled in, and then all the resources that we have that are available will come up. We list all of our free resources first, so if there's free tutoring, if there's supplemental instruction, all of those options are listed at the top, and then after that, we list if there's a private tutor or multiple private tutors available for that class. So this is the campus's central place for information on all of our academic resources for our undergraduate students. So it's really a good place to just kind of start to figure out what is available. We have a lot of different types of support on campus, so we just want to cover the different places that you can refer your student. So first and foremost, you can always refer them to their faculty member, their TA, their instructor, and encourage them to go to office hours. So this is a great opportunity to ask specific questions about the course, but also a really great opportunity to just go in and ask the professor, in your opinion, what do I need to do to be successful in this class? And they'll give advice, they'll give suggestions and tips, and they can also, of course, clarify content and give them good encouragement on how they can be successful. So we always encourage every student to take advantage of their faculty during office hours. That being said, we do know that sometimes scheduling can be challenging and a professor's office hours may be during another class. In that situation, we encourage the student to contact the professor via email to set up an appointment, or try and catch them before or after class about setting up another appointment so they can talk with them more in depth one-on-one. The second option that we have is just tutoring in general. We have a lot of different types of tutoring available on campus. Most of our centers that we have are drop-in, so things like Tippy tutoring, the math tutorial lab, physics and astronomy tutoring center, the chemistry resource center, residence education tutoring. These are all drop-in centers that your students can take advantage of. And in those settings, when a student shows up, they may be working one-on-one with a tutor, or they may be working in a group. If there's several students that have, similar questions, they're going to work together with a tutor so they can help as many students as possible, but also help the students connect with other folks in those classes. We do have a few centers that are appointment-based. So these are centers like the Writing Center, the Speaking Center. The Tippy College of Business also has their own communication center, so does the College of Engineering. And so those places are opportunities where students would sign up for an appointment in advance, and they can bring their questions, they can bring their assignment and things like that to talk through how to most be successful. And you can find information on Tutor Iowa about all of those centers, as well as what students need to know before they go. So they will find out if it's drop-in, they'll find out if it's appointment-based, and any information they need to know before going. Our third thing that we have is supplemental instruction, or SI. And SI is offered in two different places on campus. We have the ARC, or the Academic Resource Center, which is located in the IMU, or Iowa Memorial Union. And then also the College of Nursing offers it for some of their courses for nursing interest in College of Engineering students, or College of Nursing students. SI is a little bit different than tutoring. These are more structured sessions. So students that attend these, really all they have to do is bring their notes and be ready to talk about what material is happening in class at that point. The SI leader is another student who already took the class and did really well, and they'll facilitate different activities to help the students better understand the content, but also help them learn different study skills that will help them be successful in the class. SI is a great strategy to help stay on top of the material, stay current with the content, to get your questions answered, and it's a great time saver as well. So research shows that for SI specifically, one 50-minute session is the equivalent of studying on your own for about 2 hours. So we know our students are busy, and so it's a really great time saver. And then we also have private tutors. So Tutor Iowa is the campus's central place for finding private tutors on campus. And so when you do a search on the website, you can find out what is available for private tutor options. If your student is interested in private tutoring, they can work one-on-one with someone, and a lot of our private tutors will also actually do group tutoring as well. So if your student is interested in hiring a private tutor with a couple of friends, they'll often will tutor at kind of a discounted rate for multiple people. So that's also an option. And then how to refer your student. So when your student is going to these different tutoring centers, talking with their faculty, attending SI, working with a private tutor, we encourage them always to do the following things. So first and foremost, bring their notes and bring their course materials. It's going to help them be more prepared. Often it's a great opportunity that if they missed, maybe they got part of some of the information about a topic in class, but maybe missed a couple of things. It's a great way to kind of fill in notes, clarify their notes that they took in class, but really then so when they leave, they have a much more descriptive and well-rounded set of notes to help them prepare moving forward. The next thing is just coming prepared with questions or areas of discussion. It's always important to prepare before going to utilizing these services because that's going to help your student get the most out of that time that they're there. So if they do have specific questions, that's always great. The other thing is that if they don't have specific questions, that's fine as well, but they should have topics that they would like to discuss. And it's okay if they're not understanding something, it's okay if they don't know exactly what it is that they don't understand about it, because the tutor will help them figure that out. But any information that they can communicate with the tutor will help them better support them and help them. The third thing is just expecting to learn. We love getting information as quickly as possible and to move forward. But really all of our centers on campus, our faculty, our tutors, our SI leaders, they all want the students to learn and understand how they got to that point. So a lot of times students will have specific homework questions and things like that. The centers are not going to, do the homework for them or just give them the answer. They are going to help them learn how to get there and how to get to the answer. And what they typically will do, instead of doing the actual homework problem, they will take whatever concept it is that's being featured in the homework and then create another problem or kind of pull out that concept and focus on solving through that and understanding that in order to then do their homework. So it's definitely, it's a learning process that's going to help them the most in the long run, so it is going to take a little bit of time as well. And then we also encourage them to just ask questions as they come up throughout the semester. In almost every course, the material is going to build upon each other. So it's important that they understand things as things are going. We find that when students don't ask the questions as they come up, really start to struggle when it comes to midterm time or during finals or on large assignments, since the material is so built upon each other. So definitely encourage them to ask questions as they come up. And again, it can be as simple as stopping by office hours, stopping by tutoring, attending an SI session, but there are a lot of ways for helping them get clarity on content as those things come up throughout the semester.
So, excuse me, but I have a little bit of a cold today. Thank you so much, Mira and Steph, for all your great information about academic resources here at the University of Iowa. We'll now move to our question and answer portion of our webinar. Please remember that we have lots of folks attending today's webinar, and the presenters are unable to answer very specific questions about your student's experience, but can provide information that might be helpful in guiding your student. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the question box on the side. We'll then read the question out loud so all participants can hear, and then our presenters can answer. So we'll go ahead and see if anybody has any questions. I know it might take a moment. So one of the questions we have is, how much does a private tutor usually cost?
Okay, that's a great question. So our private tutors do get to set their own wages, and mainly this is because our tutors range from first and second year students all the way to fifth year PhD students. So they do tend to charge different amounts depending on their level of experience and content knowledge, but also it's an opportunity for them to really charge what they think makes the most sense for them. A lot of our tutors will negotiate price. And like I mentioned earlier, they will also charge a discounted rate typically if they're working with a group of students. So if a tutor charges $15 an hour or $10 an hour, they might do that and then charge $5 for each additional person. So then if it's a group, they can have a discounted rate.
So one of the questions is around, recommendations for students in larger classes. So any general advice when a student is maybe in a large lecture class?
So I think one of the pieces of advice that I have for that is that when they're in a large class, I think it's really helpful if they have if they study with other people. One of the things that we'll tell students is don't do college by yourself. And so that's everything, from utilizing the faculty, utilizing tutoring and things like that, but it's also about studying with other people that are in the course. I think that can really help make that large course seem smaller. And then they can one strategy that's really helpful for a lot of students is then, as they learn material, just to sit down and talk it through with someone, whether that's once a week, a couple of times a week, whatever that looks like for them, because when they talk it through, it helps them figure out what they're understanding as well. And I think, too, when you're in a large class, that it's really good to really reach out to the faculty member and make that connection, because that will also help it feel smaller. And then we always encourage that if we offer supplemental instruction, SI, those courses that we offer that for are typically very high enrollment courses, and they're really large. So it's a great way to make that class feel smaller, and you're going to have that structured study group session with other folks as well as with the SI leader.
So you all provided some great information about how to structure the conversation with your student, and we have a question about how do you recommend to best deliver that communication?
I think that's a really great question, and I think that's something that, so much of it does depend upon the particular situation, but in general, I think oftentimes we'll talk with a student about what are the outcome, and again, thinking about how do we link behaviors with expectations and goals. So for example, we could say, what do you hope to learn from this class? Or what do you hope to learn from this semester? And how can we make you get there? And oftentimes that does implement using or relate to using academic support resources. So I think the first step would be coming back to that concept of like the gap between behaviors and goals, like we talked about earlier. So I think revisiting that, I think maybe going back to some of those questions and really talking with the student about that. And then I think too, as part of the process of creating the plan for how to meet those goals, looking at Tutor Iowa, I think is really helpful. And I think that it's one of the best websites that I've seen at college campuses where students can type in, or parents and families can type in a course, and then they'll receive a list of resources that exist for that particular course. So I think that's a next step to really talk about what are some building blocks that we can do to make a student as academically successful as possible here.
And another thing I would add on Tutor Iowa, which we didn't talk about, are that we have these academic tips worksheets. So as you're talking with your student, if they're saying that something they're struggling with is maybe note-taking or reading or something like that, or they're really struggling because all of their exams are multiple choice, we have different worksheets. There's a section on different academic tips worksheets. And those just have a lot of different tips and strategies. So that can also help give you some more support when you're talking with your student about different things that they can do to be successful.
So one of our questions is, who can they contact if they can't find the additional help for a class?
We want you to contact us. So if you're on the Tutor Iowa website and you can't find something, or you're looking and maybe there's some confusion, please contact us. You can call our office number, and the Tutor Iowa email comes to us and we can help you. And your student, or you can also contact the academic advisor. They are very knowledgeable about all of the resources, and so we want to make sure that we can get them connected to whatever would best help them.
So it looks like that's all the, we have one, what is our contact information? All right, so our contact information, our phone number here is 319-335-1497. Steph, what's the Tutor Iowa email?
And the Tutor Iowa email is just tutoriowa@uiowa.edu. And so we read all of those emails every day, so we will get back to you.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us, especially to Mira and Steph, our presenters. Just a note that all webinars will be posted online at uc.uiowa.edu/family-resources. If you're unable to get your question answered during the webinar today, we'll follow up with you via email to answer your question. And then additional questions can be sent to uc-retention@uiowa.edu for a response from a University of Iowa staff member. Please join us next time for our next month's webinar in April, which is Summer Fun. I can't believe we're already talking about summer. Still kind of cold here in Iowa City, but looking at jobs and internships that might help your students over the summer. And that will be April Fool's Day. It's not a joke. We will be here from noon to 1. And feel free to log on and we'll see you then. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Friday. On Iowa, go Hawks.